Mm. 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 Yummy. Hi, my name is Emiko Davies. I'm a cookbook author and I live in Florence, Italy. Today I wanted to make you pomodori al riso, which are rice stuffed tomatoes, and they're baked in the oven basically on a tray full of potato wedges. The potatoes soak up all the oily, tomatoey flavors and it's absolutely delicious. It's a great summer recipe because obviously tomatoes, but also because this is really, really delicious cold. Actually, probably even better eaten cold or at room temperature than piping hot, so you can prepare it in advance or cook it the night before and then serve it, room temperature for lunch the next day. It's absolutely delicious. The recipe that I turn to mostly when I go for this particular dish is Roddy's recipe. She's a friend of mine and another cookbook author who lives in Rome. This is her book right here. It's called 5 Quarters. I think it's also called A Kitchen in Rome in the US. It has 2 different names. And she has a great recipe for it. I also turn to Arborio. Arborio has this doorstop of a cookbook. It was originally written in 1929 and it's like the sort of the joy of cooking for Italian housewives. And she has a great recipe as well. And Arborio was also Roman. This is a really very, very Roman dish. It's simple and it's wonderful. There's all kinds of pomodori al riso recipes. Actually, I mean, a tomato makes such a good receptacle for stuffing things into. Throughout Italy you can find a similar kind of recipe, but I really love the Roman one because it is just so simple. You only need rice. You would use the kind of rice that you would use for risotto, so like I'm using arborio today. You need a little bit of garlic if you like it, and some herbs. I've got a few different herbs that I just rummaged out of the garden. This one here is called nepitella in Tuscany, where I live. In Rome, it's called mentuccia. It's a little bit different. It's got a slightly larger leaf, but it's basically like a very minty, somewhere between a cross almost of like oregano and mint. So you probably won't be able to find this, but you could use either oregano, mint. You can use basil. I've got a bit of basil here, and I've got a few little oregano leaves. I'm going to use a mix of those, and salt and pepper, and that's about it. Arborio says you don't even need the potato. The potatoes are optional, but to me the potatoes are kind of fundamental to this dish. The way that they soak up the flavors of the tomato is just amazing. So I would definitely say use the potatoes. I'm using sort of 2 this size, about a pound of potatoes. Now the tomatoes that you want for this dish, yes, you want them to be ripe, but you don't want them to be overly ripe because they're going to lose their shape as they bake and they will slump. And really what you want is that tomato that's going to, perfectly hold, it's like a little bowl, it's going to perfectly hold the rice inside. The tops are used as like a lid. It's just genius. I would say you need 2 tomatoes per person. I'm going to go with 8 today. And what we're going to do is slice off the tops neatly so that you've got, that you want that little lid. The lids we're going to set aside, and the insides we're just going to scoop out with a spoon. Now, there's a couple different things you can do here. Some people are really fussy about tomato seeds in their rice. So if you don't want the seeds, you can use a sieve and just sieve them out. What you do want is all of the juiciness. So the juiciness is really the most important part here. So, you can either just squeeze these with your hand. That works just fine. You can put them through a food mill. You can blend them with a stick blender. And if you don't mind the seeds, you can just blend the whole thing together and then you're done. But what we really want is this like pulpy, juicy goodness down here, because what we're going to do with this tomato juice is we will be soaking the rice in it for about 45 minutes, and that soaking helps the rice cook perfectly when it's baking. Now with the tomatoes on the other hand, when you've finished all of them, what you want to do is grab a clean tea towel. And we want to get out a little bit of this moisture here, so I'm going to sprinkle some salt into each cavity, like that, and just turn them upside down. And that's just going to help them keep their shape while they're cooking. Now again, I'm going to just squeeze through here. You can do as you wish with the seeds and the bits and pieces. The other flavor we're going to add here, so I'm going to salt and pepper this, add salt and pepper, quite generous. Pepper. Okay, you can either finely chop the garlic and add it in, or if you want a sort of a milder flavor, not so garlicky, I would just do this. This is plenty. Just squash the garlic clove with a knife. You can peel it if you want, you don't even have to do that. And just place it in there. That's going to give it enough garlicky flavor without being too strong. So if you're a little bit sensitive to that garlic flavor, that's a nice way to add it without having too much. We're just going to swirl this in here. And then you want to rip up your herbs and put them in. Look at this. It smells so good already. My husband always says he could just drink this. So good. You could use dried herbs as well if you want. I just, we've got things growing out literally in the wild here. This one here just grows between the cracks in the footpath, so you can easily find it. I wish you could smell this. And now we're going to add our rice to it. This is about 10-ish tablespoons of arborio rice. You basically want to consider that you're going to have like a scoop of rice, a little bit more than a scoop each, into each of these tomatoes. It's going to plump up a little bit while it's marinating, and then also while it's cooking. You obviously want to have enough liquid in here that it is going to cover all the rice. If you find that your tomatoes are not so juicy, these are well covered. If they're not so juicy, then if you've set aside this pulp from before, you could blitz that up and add some more of that to the mixture, or squeeze out what you can from it and keep adding. If you find it's really not enough, you could resort to adding a little bit of water, but the idea is this rice is going to be so tasty. It's cooking purely in tomato juice. It's just going to be so delicious. So while we're waiting for the rice to sit for about 45 minutes, we're going to prepare our potatoes if you're using them. Highly recommend that you do. You could leave the skins on if you like. Italians aren't fond of leaving skins on potato wedges, but that's entirely up to you. The beauty of this is that because the potatoes don't get turned around or anything, the ones on the bottom get all sticky and juicy, and the ones that are poking out at the top get nice and crispy. And Rachel also points out to make sure when you're handing these out to your family, your guests, whoever you're cooking for, that you let everyone have an even number of crispy and soggy potatoes. I fully agree. They're both so good. So I'm just sort of cutting them into sticks, thick sort of sticks like this. And here all you need is some olive oil and salt and pepper. And these are ready to go. And we are just going to toss some olive oil over this. There's plenty of olive oil used in this. Make sure you pick a good one. I'm using obviously a Tuscan olive oil, extra virgin. Plenty of salt and pepper, and then just use your hands to toss those directly in the pan, and try to layer them kind of evenly so that you've got like a bed for the tomatoes to go in. Okay, now we're just going to wait a little bit. I'm going to preheat the oven, 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit, and then we'll come back to our tomatoes. Okay, we're back to our tomatoes. You should see after draining them a little bit, they're not going to be watery inside anymore. They just make the perfect little vessel, and you will notice that the rice has already soaked up quite a bit of that juiciness, and should be enough liquid in there for it to cook really nicely. When you're filling these, you only want to go about 3/4 full, because it will plump up a little bit and you don't want them to explode everywhere. Now you want to find you want to actually find the lid that's closest to it. Now, some of these are really small actually, but oh, and if you put the clove of garlic in instead of chopping it, you can just fish that out now, or just avoid it when you're scooping the rice in. That'll give someone a bit of a surprise. I usually leave the herbs whole in here though. And then just nestle them in to the potatoes. I'm going to put a few more of these herbs around, just the oregano and a bit of the netitella. Only because I have them, I don't want to waste them, but you don't have to do that. I put a little bit more olive oil over the whole thing, including the tops of the tomatoes. Like I said, you can't go wrong with the olive oil here. It's not too much. And there we are, and this is ready to go in the oven. It's going to go in for about an hour. I think it really depends on how ripe and how mature your tomatoes are. Also how long you have left the rice. I said 45 minutes, but actually you can leave it a lot longer if you're preparing this and you have to go out. You can leave it in the fridge for a couple of hours. You can leave it overnight. Obviously then the rice doesn't need as long to cook. So I would check it at an hour and see. The rice should be quite tender, and the potatoes will be golden. The tomatoes should look sort of slumped and a little bit shriveled. So you just want to check all of those things. I would say at least an hour, up to an hour and a half, or Rachel even says an hour and 3/4. Arborio says an hour, but I think it really just depends on how long you've left your rice and how the tomatoes are, so see how you go. Alright, so this was in the oven for just over an hour, and as you can see they're shriveled and the rice has really puffed out, and you've got these kind of delicious sort of crispy bits that we're picking out over the top, and underneath it's still very, very moist and delicious. And the potatoes are cooked through, and you've got some crispier ones and some deliciously soaked up ones. This is what you're looking for here. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is really delicious when it has rested a little bit. So ideally, you take it out of the oven and you want to wait about half an hour before serving these. Or you can just wait until they're completely cooled and eat them at room temperature, and they are still delicious. Arborio says they're even better cold than they are when they come right out of the oven, and I think that's the perfect way to enjoy them in the summer too. So here's the finished dish. I hope you enjoyed following along, and I really hope you give this a go. You can find the full recipe at Food52. And let me know if you do try it. You can find me on Instagram at Emiko Davies, and I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you want to leave a comment about anything else you'd like to see, maybe something Italian inspired, just let me know. Thanks again. Bye.